Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for taking the time out for this episode. I really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Yeah, super excited to talk about your book, which is Loving and Living Through Grief. And obviously, it's dealing with the loss and everything. So before we get to the topic, just wanted to get to know better about yourself, so our audience will know like who you are and why you become a life coach. So tell us what made you becoming a life coach?
I have had two husbands die, as well as my parents, my sister,
Yeah,
most of my family, and lots of friends. So I have lots of experience with dying and facing grief. But after my two husbands died, after the second one died, I really did some self-examination, saying, "What am I supposed to be doing now?
mhm,
How am I going to live the rest of my life?" And what I discovered is that I've got gifts that I can give to other people who are dealing with grief and helping them deal with their grief through writing and through learning happiness practices so that
yeah.
they can live their best lives. And it makes me feel good to make them feel good. And so we all can be happy.
Yeah, it's it's so sorry to hear that you have to lose both of your husbands and also like a family members. It's not easy things to go through because I lost both of my parents early age when I was 13 years old, and totally
Oh,
understand going through such a thing. Just losing someone, most of people like haven't probably lost their loved ones, and it's not easy for them to understand. And those who already lost them, and they know the feeling of it and everything. It stays for a long term, isn't it? The
it
pain
does.
and emotions. Yeah. Yeah. So how long you been become a life coach? How long are you serving others?
I Ron died 4 years ago, and I started writing right after that because I'm a writer. I still
Mhm.
teach writing online at the university. I've done that for many, many years.
Yeah.
And as I was trying to figure out what to do, I just started writing to myself. What can I do? How can I feel better? What's my purpose? All that sort of thing. The more I wrote, the more different ways of writing I discovered that would help. And so I decided I'd start teaching other people how to do that who were dealing with grief.
Yeah.
And I did. I invited people to come to my home, and we met regularly until the pandemic. And then, of
Mhm.
course, we went online.
Mhm.
So that really helped. And I also read a book called Happy for No Reason by Marcy Shimoff.
Yeah.
And I thought I need this
Yeah.
because I wasn't feeling any joy or happiness. I felt kind of flat. And
Mhm.
reading that made me feel a lot better. And I discovered that she had a program so that I could become a certified Happy for No Reason trainer to be able to use all the things that she does and all the training that I do. So I've combined grief and happiness, writing
Yeah.
and happiness, in a way to help people discover how they can live their best lives and feel their best, even under the circumstances they're dealing with.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And when did you wrote your book, Loving and Living Through Grief?
I started writing it a few months after Ron died, my last
Yeah.
husband who died.
Yeah.
And I did that because a good friend of his had just dropped dead, and he was much younger than Ron. And he was married and had two teenage daughters, and I was so concerned about his wife because I knew
Mhm.
she had no idea uh, of what she should be doing, because she wouldn't have even considered her husband dying at that point in her life.
Yeah.
So I wrote her a big letter saying, um, these are the things that you need to be concerned about right now, and these are the things you don't need to worry about at all. And she let me know later how much good that letter did for her, because nobody else was talking to her about those things. They'd
Yeah.
come around and say, let me know if you need anything, but they weren't offering any, concrete help. And I thought, I've got to do more than that. So I decided to write her every week for a
Mhm.
year after Chap died.
Oh.
And in the process of it, I thought, okay, at this point, what would she be dealing with, and what would she be thinking about? And before I started sending the cards, I decided I better write out the contents for all of them to
Yeah.
make sure I got 52 things. So I did. And when I finished that, I thought, this is an outline for a book. This could help a lot of people, because lots of times when people search for books to help them deal with their griefs, most of the books are memoirs. And I've read a lot of those, and they're powerful books, but they weren't helping me personally that much. Where this book that I've written, at the end of every chapter, it's got something active that the person can do to help them deal with their grief.
Yeah.
So it's really different, and it's powerful. And I've had just wonderful reviews and comments on it from people that say that this is the book that really helps.
Yeah, congratulations for launching your book. And yeah, thank you for such a thing. Like sometimes like people go through some kind of grief and everything, they tend to forget about other people, and you remember others and trying to help them who are going through like the same situation you've been through with your book. So which is great. I think it's a great intention to do such a thing. So with your book, walk me through like what is your book is all about? Is that like a calming something down to someone and just making them accepting the situation they had, or like is there clear path for them to keep moving forward with their life?
The book has 26 chapters, and each one of those chapters is on a different subject. So you can look at the table of contents and say, oh, that's what I want to read today, because that's the chapter that I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah.
For instance, there's a chapter on forgiveness, because lots of times there's somebody out there that you need to forgive and release it so that you can move on. And sometimes it's yourself that you need to do some self-forgiveness so that you can be able to move forward. And this chapter talks about what forgiveness is, what it means, what you can do to forgive people, and how you can get past forgiveness, and how much better it feels when you actually practice it. So if you realize that you've got some anger towards someone, perhaps in the way they treated you around the death or your grief, then you can go through this process. It's in this chapter that helps you solve that particular problem. So there's like 26 different problems or situations that you can use the book for to help you deal with those situations. And not everybody needs them all. But you can, that's what's so good about it, is to be able to pick and choose what you really need. Most people I've talked to end up reading the whole book because they got so much out of where they started that they wanted to get that much out of all the rest of it too.
Yeah, interesting. So I want to like know your journey, like what you actually did every time you lost someone. Like what was your mindset like? I know is everyone react to the different losing someone. I was like a proper shock for 4 or 5 days, like when both my parents passed away. So for me to take some time and everything, it took me some time. Some people reacted different ways. Some gone and depression, anxiety. Other person like sometimes get like my mom when my dad passed away, and she died in within like 90 days. So my dad died in 9th of January, 11th of January. My mom died in 8th of April. So it's like inside 90 days. And she couldn't take it. Like she was depressed, proper depressed. She was grieving, like proper crying all the time, seeing his face when she going to sleep and everything. So she couldn't take it at all, comparing to like me and other siblings of mine. So like, how was your process? Like when you lost your first husband, how did you take it? And was it like it takes long time to recover from it, or like not so long comparing to like your second husband?
It's both times were really pretty different. And when Jacques died, we were married for 22 years, and he started having health challenges around our 5th anniversary. So we'd been dealing with things for quite a while. And his last 2 years were really tough, very, very hard on him, being in a hospital lots of the time and dealing with lots of pain, especially. So when someone you love is going through all that, you can't help but absorb that and be feeling with him. And ironically, he was a philosopher. He was at the college teaching a class
Hmm.
to nurses. It was required for all nurses on dealing with death and dying.
Yeah.
So we had talked lots about death and dying. We had many deep conversations about it. But when it came right down to him, I don't think he really realized that he was going to die, because he kept going to the doctor, going to the hospital, thinking that they were going to make him better so he could go
Right.
back to his old life.
Yeah.
So when he didn't get to do that, when he ultimately died, it was tough, because I thought, how could I have handled
Did
it
he had any kind
differently?
of critical illness, like a cancer or something?
He had congestive heart failure, and then
Okay.
renal failure, kidney failure that went along with the congestive heart failure.
Yeah.
And he had diabetes too.
Okay.
And ironically, Ron also ended up with congestive heart failure and renal failure and had to go on dialysis. So we had those things in common.
Hmm.
But with Jacques, it was kind of, with forgiveness, I had some forgiving of myself to do, because I after he died, because I just realized like an hour before he died
Yeah.
that this is what happened, because he asked me if he was going to get better. And I thought, shoot, that means that this whole time he thought he was getting better and that he could
Yeah.
get fully better. And so I was kind of beating myself up over that, because I thought, what could I have done to have made the path easier for him?
Hmm.
And I finally realized that wasn't serving me, because I did the best that I could at the time under
Yeah.
the circumstances that we were in. And I think that's what most people do. They do the very best that they can. And they don't need to beat themselves up over it. So I spent a lot of time by myself that first year. I
Hmm.
did go back to teaching at the university, but I would go to school and teach and come home and sit. I wasn't reading a lot. I wasn't watching TV or
Yeah.
anything like that. I was mostly just sitting. It took me quite a while to get to the point where I felt like being around people again. And ultimately, when I did, I actually did very well. And I was surprised, but I was
Yeah.
also grateful. It was different when Ron died, because he had such a different philosophy. He very much believed in living in the moment always, and that was
Yeah.
really all that mattered, because it's really all you have. And so our lives together were like
Hmm.
that. We were always focused not on anything that happened in the past, not on what was going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
We just focused on what was going on right then. And that made it a lot easier for him to deal with his illness and his pain. And it made it a lot easier for me to support him, because I learned from the first time that I really wanted to do what I could to support both of us in the
Hmm.
process, so that it could be the best experience it could be, because we knew that death was inevitable.
Yeah.
And it made sense to us to make our lives the best it could be while we were together. So
Yeah.
that's how we lived. And it was much easier the second time. That's not to say I wasn't kind of wiped out right after he died for a while, getting myself back together. But once I did, I was able to find positive and productive things to do, and really reinsert myself into society in a way that's positive and I feel good about. And
Yeah.
I love helping other people to hopefully find that happiness too, that they can have to make them feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. So both of you are, you mentioned that you lost many people as well. So your
Mhm.
parents, your siblings as well, right?
Yes, my sister died in November last year. It's been
Oh,
just
sorry to
about
hear
a
that.
year right now.
Yeah. Or was it cause of like an COVID or just a normal cause?
Well, it wasn't caused by that. She hadn't been healthy for a while. She was a
Hmm.
lot older than I am. And when her husband died, he was 59 and she was 57.
Right.
And she just kind of stopped functioning.
Hmm.
She was very active in her church, so she'd go to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
And besides that, she sat. And I mean, in the same chair all the time. She lived far away from me, so I didn't realize until a few years later, when she had a serious health crisis and I went to help take care of her, that her husband had died in their bedroom. And so she had
Wow.
that bed removed.
Yeah.
and taken away, and she hadn't really gone back in the bedroom. She was sitting in a reclining chair in the living room because she couldn't face going back in there.
Hmm.
So she was in, she got finally toward the end of her life so that she smiled more, and we could talk and have good conversations, but she was very sad all the time. She was part of my inspiration too, to be able to
Yeah.
help people not get stuck in a place like that, because it's easy to get stuck. It's easier to sit there and get stuck than it is to actively do something to help yourself feel better.
Hmm.
And so I want to have different options for people that they can use to help themselves feel better, and that I can help them on the way.
Yeah. And she wasn't like like yourself. So she was like a different. She took some time to recover, right? It took her some time for like accepting the situation.
Yeah, she lived, let me see, 20 years after he died.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and she lived kind of, and she accepted that he was gone, but she
Hmm.
also accepted that she was never going to be happy again, really,
Yeah.
that her life was not going to be what she anticipated it would be for the rest of her life. So for me,
Yeah.
it's important to help people find what's good about their lives now,
Hmm.
what they can do, what is beautiful in the world out there. One of the things that helped me a lot, and I've got a chapter on that, is gratitude.
Yeah.
Because people kept telling me that I needed to be paying attention to what I was grateful for after Shock died. No, what did I have to be grateful for? My husband's dead.
Yeah.
That was my mindset. But I had enough people say something about it that I thought, well, it wouldn't hurt me to write down a couple things. Well, once
Mhm.
I started writing them down, I kept having more and more things to be grateful for. And I finally got a journal to write gratitude in, because I was focusing on the good things that were out there. And the more I did that, the better I felt. And it
Yeah.
could be simple things. It could be like, I really love drinking ice water. And I didn't before, but now I really appreciate it. I didn't even think about water before, but now I realize how good it makes me feel to drink adequate water to keep me healthy, but also to refresh me.
Yeah.
And anybody can have that. It's a simple thing. It doesn't have to be a big giant thing like, oh, if I went on a big trip, or if I got a new home that was different, or that sort of thing. It doesn't have to be big like that. It can be things
Mhm.
in every moment that can um, let you realize that life is good.
Yeah. It's like you have to also accept the situation, right? Because the
Mhm,
reality of life, like we're not gonna be there for forever, and that's the law
mhm.
of the life and universe. Every person have to meet the death. So why not accepting it? Like some people can go early, some people are gonna go late. It's just the way it is. The more we accepting it is, it's much easier to accepting the reality when it actually comes. So with me, like after losing my parents, like if any of my loved ones passed away or something, it's not gonna affect me like how it used to be before. Right now, I'm just accepting it because this is the reality. Someone have to go. I have no guarantee with my own life. I can die tonight, tomorrow, and then how can I expect someone going to live forever? And that's not reality. And obviously we have to have a grief, and we have to go through the sadness, and obviously remembers of the person is going to be there. It's not removable. Like obviously you lost both of your husband, the memory is there. You're gonna miss them time to time, but it doesn't mean that life is ended for you. It's a new chapter, it begins, right?
That's right. That's right. And I think a lot of it has to do with, while the person is still living, choosing to live your best life with them,
Mm,
and choosing to support them however they want to be supported.
yeah.
Uh, with Ron, for instance, it got to the point he was having a reaction to the solution that they were using for his dialysis.
Yeah.
And it was a terrible, terrible reaction. And it was incredibly uncomfortable. And finally he told the doctor that if they couldn't fix that problem, that he
Mhm.
couldn't stay on dialysis. And the doctor said, well, you realize that you can only live maybe a week after you stop dialysis, and your
Well,
quality of life is not going to be that great in that
yeah.
week. And he said, I can't live like I am, and I would rather not make things worse for me and worse for the people that are watching me and taking care of me. He said, I'm ready. I've had a good, wonderful life. And
Mhm.
so let's just go on hospice. And that's what he did. He went on hospice on Monday and he died on Friday.
Oh, yeah, so sorry to hear that. And also it affects, like if someone got critical illness and your loved one in the home, especially with the partners, it affect the person next to you who's looking after you. And day to day is like you see more pain than actually the person is feeling the pain. Because I remember my dad had a lung cancer and he struggled for like one and a
Mm.
half years. Every night he used to scream with the pain. So I have to put
Oh,
painkiller patches on his chest. And it, I think the scream was still here till I was like 25 years old. So from
wow.
age of 13, I lost him till 25 years old. Sometime in the midnight, I used to wake up jumping because I can hear my dad is screaming and asking me to put the patches on for him. So the
Mm.
pain he had to go through, this is the only way I just accepting his death, which is like he's in a peace now comparing to what hardship he had to go through. And also like my mom couldn't handle the pain. She used to sleep in a different room because of everything's going on because she had anxiety really bad. So if she's seeing him like he's screaming this much and having the pain, she's gonna get heart attack. And eventually she did. After losing him, she had a heart attack and passed away. So yeah, it's like it goes more, I think, on family members comparing to the person actually going through the kind of critical illness. And I think accepting it is better. Like if someone died with a critical illness after the pain is relieved, so that way you can comfort yourself thinking they're in a peace right now, comparing to
That's
the
right.
past the experience they had. So I have one
That's
question for you, which is like obviously you wrote the book and also you coaching other people living through the grief. So if someone lost their loved one, what's the first thing they can do in order to reduce the stress and the anxiety they have and the pain they have?
the very first thing, excuse me, that I always say is that they need to practice good self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Self-care is incredibly important. And what happens a lot of time, like with my sister, she stopped that, I don't know how long she went between showers, and she didn't eat wisely.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of times people either forget to eat, don't care about eating, or they eat everything in sight and things that aren't good for them. They'll do
Yeah.
one extreme or the other. They also sleep can be kind of an escape, so they sleep whenever they get a chance to, and that fouls up their cycle, so that they're kind of in and out of sleep and never get adequately rested. So
Mm-hmm.
resting is very important. Eating is very important. Moving is very important. One of
Yeah.
the things that I see most often is people sit down and they don't get up unless they absolutely have to for something, where you can go for a walk. I know even when COVID first hit and everybody was absolutely at home and didn't go anywhere, I
Yeah.
walked around my yard. Being outside was very important. And even if I would walk in circles outside for
Mm-hmm.
not that long of a distance, it exercised my body. I could breathe more deeply,
Yeah.
and I could observe the beauty around me, that in spite of everything that was happening in the world, where I live here in Hawaii, the sky was still beautifully blue and it had white puffy clouds and green trees. And, I could just really appreciate looking out of the ocean and seeing the vastness of it and the vastness of the world. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, it makes a huge difference to take care of yourself, because nobody else can do that for you.
Yeah.
People can bring you food or sit with you or that sort of thing, which is good. I'm not saying don't do that. Those things are good, but actively making the decision to take care of yourself in ways that are positive and support you can comfort you really more than anything else. There's lots of those nightmares like you were talking about
Yeah.
will come when you're not on a regular sleep cycle. And both times with both husbands, I ended up getting a prescription for the doctor for something to help me sleep for the first few weeks
Hmm.
because there was no sleep for me. It wasn't coming. And if I dozed off, I would have a dream I didn't want to have. And I had a fear of these dreams. But having that help to get me over that hump, I was able to decrease it and get off of it relatively soon. I went
Yeah.
right away for a prescription after Ron died because I knew what happened the first time and I knew the importance of getting adequate rest. So that really helped me a lot. So I whenever anybody asks me that question about what the first thing is you can do, it's always self-care. Take good care of yourself.
Yeah. And what's the like a next step in order to reduce the grief? Obviously, there'll be time to time like you're gonna feel upset and depressed and stressed like things because some people gonna talk about it and make you remember it, right? What someone can do actually during that time, like obviously you're socializing, you're talking, and someone talking about your partner or the parents you lost.
I think it's important to not allow conversations to get away from you
Hmm.
because sometimes somebody will start saying something that is unknowingly
Yeah.
hurtful. And instead of reacting to it, you just sit there and take it because you don't want to talk about it. And that just makes it worse. So if you can get proactive in your conversations, it's good. And when you pay attention to what helps you when somebody says something to you, you can kind of guide people in that direction of what helps.
Hmm.
For instance, you were saying people talking about your loved one and it makes you sad. If when you're dealing with somebody who is dealing with loss, if you say something about their loved one and say their name and have it be positive, that
Yeah.
can be better than anything else. With Jacques, for instance, was a fabulous singer, and I had people come up and say, I'm really going to miss his voice because every time I knew he was going to be performing someplace, I'd go because it just was so beautiful. Well, that made me feel good. That didn't make me sad.
Yeah.
It brought back the good memories of that sort of thing. And the same thing happened with Ron when somebody would say something about how much he had helped them figure out a complex problem with their business. He was
Hmm.
absolutely amazing with that he really changed lives by the way that he helped other people. And I've had lots of people say either how he helped them or they missed him so much because they can't call him and ask him those questions that he was the one that always had the
Hmm.
answer for. So those sorts of things are really good, where if they dwell on the negative,
Yeah.
like me after Jacques died, people would say, well, you can always get married again. And that was the last thing on my mind. And it was not what I wanted to talk about at that point.
Yeah.
And saying like that, or to someone who loses a child, tell them, well, you can have another baby or you can adopt, or they don't need you to say that. Really think before you say things so that you can say something that is helpful and positive, always positive. And if someone says something to you that doesn't work, like one of the things that I especially noticed after Jacques died, because not Jacques, Ron, because not that many people talked to me after Jacques died.
Yeah.
We had been together a long time, had tons of friends and people that we knew, but he'd been sick for so long, they had kind of drifted away and they just kind of weren't there for me. But after Ron died, now I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. It was about we talking when people would start to say something that wasn't positive, I can
Yeah.
redirect the conversation. I don't have to listen to what it is that I know is going to make me cry or that I know is going to be too hard to deal with. I can redirect the conversation into something that's more positive.
Yeah.
And the positivity and happiness is the key to be able to breathe and exhale and find some relief.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at, honestly, especially during the time. I know a lot of people come with a different kind of advice. Some of them which is great, and some of them is like making you feel like more worse
Yeah.
it is. And some people talk so mean way, and you just get to the conclusion even though you haven't gone through the grief yet. And like I remember, like when my dad passed away, one of my uncle was just talking bad things to my mom. You should have looked after that way, doing that way. You are the bad luck because of my brother died and everything. So it was like a horrible thing, like how can someone say that during this kind of situation, honestly? And these things, like I know a lot of people goes through them certain things. Not everyone's family are like supportive. So I think we have to have like a kind of boundaries, and also like especially family members need to look out for them kind of family members as well. Like your mom lost her husband, then obviously me as a son or a daughter need to take care of my mom and keep away the uncle or auntie like who's gonna talk that kind of thing. Like we can see you like after a week or two, not right now, because you're gonna make the
Mhm.
situation worse. So I think we have to have that kind of boundaries for those kind of people also. And some people are really nice and supportive. They give the positive energy, like how you supported your sister, which is great. But oftentimes, like you get some kind of family members, it just ruins the whole thing. So, in terms of like during your process of going through the grief and everything, did you have like someone supported you and help you through the journey? Did you have any coach or like any family members?
When Jacques died, I didn't.
Hmm.
I have a son and a daughter, and they both lived way far away, different directions. And I I'd been the last 2 years of his life, I had stopped working anyplace else and stayed at home or at the hospital with him, taking care of things like for him. And I did have one friend. She was an absolute miracle. We became best friends right after 8th grade. And we never went to school together because we always were at different schools, but we had connections on and off through our lives. But I hadn't seen her for probably 20 years at that point, because she had moved to Alaska, which is very far away from where I was living.
Right.
And she happened to bring her daughter down to go to graduate school at the university,
Yeah.
and it came down from Alaska. So she made a point to come see me. And it was right after, well, Jacques was actually in the hospital when she got there. And he had fallen and broken his hip in addition to everything else. And then
Mhm.
the anesthetic he had put him into kidney failure. So he had to go on dialysis right then. And everything was just a mess. I was dealing with so much stuff. And to see this friend from the past just appear
Yeah.
was so wonderful. And Jacques' husband happened to, not Jacques' husband, Jacques' son happened to be there that day. And he said, you've been with dad like constantly. His son had come in from out of town. He said, why don't you go with your friend and go have dinner and just go spend the night at home, and I'll stay here with dad.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. And we went to my house and spent the night. And I said, I've got a second room here. You can stay as long as you want to. She ended up staying with me and helping me take care of him until about 2 months after he died.
Hmm.
And because her daughter was down here at the university, or down in California at the university. So she didn't want to be too far away from her daughter. So it was a good thing for her. She had a place where she could stay, that she wasn't worried about
Yeah.
expenses or that sort of thing. And she could be close to her daughter. And it was a good thing to me, because I don't know how I could have handled all of his care by myself. And she really just pitched in, and we both were taking care of him. And it was amazing. So you never know when you're going to have a friend pop
Yeah.
in. And just when that sort of thing happens, welcome them with open arms. Because lots of times people want to help, but they don't know how to help. They don't know what to do. they'll say something like, let me know if I can do anything for you.
Mhm.
Don't say that. Never say that, because if the person could tell you what they needed help with, they could probably get the help taken care of themselves.
Yeah.
They don't need to be making decisions at that point. Just automatically do things. Like she just automatically showed up. Those are the people that helped me the most. The people that just automatically showed up, or just called me, or sent me something in the mail, just to let me know that I wasn't forgotten,
Mhm.
that people were thinking about me, and that I wasn't alone in the world. That's
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it makes it easier, like when you have like someone supporting you and be there for you when you actually need it. Like when I lost both of my parents, first couple of months I was with my one of my brother-in-law house with his family, and because he had like a young three children, they always like keep me occupied because I was playing with them and everything. So that time had like a good time as well. And also my brother-in-law, he is like also taking me outside. We are playing some certain games and everything. So always like I had a good distraction comparing to like what I was going through. And it really, really helped me. So those who are going through grief, I think they need some kind of friend or family members who can actually give them a good distraction for them, because you need that for a few months or a few years. It depends on the personal perspective. So like when you like see like your clients comes to you with the help, how's the process like you work with them at the beginning?
What I do, I don't actually do life coaching. I'm more of a facilitator.
Okay.
And we have groups where the biggest thing, I'm sorry.
Nurse.
Mm. The thing that I do the most is help people with writing and
Yeah.
discovering things through their writing. So I have a Facebook group where I post a prompt every Sunday, and people can write and post it and talk to each other about their writing.
Mhm.
But I also have a group that meets every Saturday, and it's only for an hour, but every Saturday I give them a different topic to write on. They'll write on it, and then we share what we wrote about whatever it was.
Mhm.
And it's powerful. I never know what the topic's going to be from week to week. I keep track of whatever comes up for me that I give to them, but all of them will tie back into how they're dealing with grief and what can help them.
Yeah.
And they find that really powerful. And from doing all this, I have just completed a pilot program to get a new thing started, that we will be meeting every week and do writing practices. We'll do happiness practices, and we'll have time. It'll all be on Zoom
Mhm.
still. And because I'm getting kind of a international following instead of just
Yeah.
people here on Maui, that we're doing it on Zoom, we can have more people come that way. And then they'll have breakout rooms in Zoom, so they get to know each other and get to talk to each other. And we're going to be doing that every week.
Yeah.
And I had invited about 20 people to do this pilot program with me, where we talked about what I wanted to do. Then I did sample classes so they could see what it would be like. And then we talked about it at the end about what do we do now to make this happen. And one of the things we were talking about was how much to charge for it. And I said, I feel uncomfortable charging people for this kind of help. This is the sort of thing I think everybody's entitled to and should be
Mhm.
able to have access to. And so the group decided that they would get together and do a nonprofit organization to support the program.
Yeah.
So now anybody can come to that program, because it's at no cost, because the nonprofit organization is making it happen. So I'm very
Yeah.
excited about that. And I'm delighted to have anybody come into that group.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so we are running out of the time for this podcast episode. Just so thankful for you sharing your journey as well and talk about a little bit about your book. So those who's listening, how they can find your book and more about you.
Well, my book is Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief.
Yeah.
And if you go on my website, you'll be able to sign up for this Grief and Happiness Alliance that I was talking about. That's a free service that's you can take full advantage of. You don't have to come every week, but every week you come, you're going to get benefit from it. And my website's name is the same as my book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief.com. And you're looking for the Grief and Happiness Alliance on the website to sign up for it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Emily. So I really appreciate you coming to this show and shared your journey. You need a lot of courage to share them kind of journey. And I really appreciate it. I wish you good luck with the rest of your life and in your career as well. I hope you have a wonderful week.
Thank you very much. And I wish the same for you.
Thank you so much. All right, then, guys, it's a wrap. So you know how to find Emily and her new book, which is Loving and Living Through Grief. And go check out her book and her website. And if you want to work with her, then reach out also. So that's a wrap. So I'll see you on next episode. So take care, stay safe. Thank you.